fun.
How do you write that?
Okay, stop it. Sit down. Okay, welcome to Who Core. This is Vision Night 2018. We're excited about it. We want to get going right away because we have lots to go over. I'm going to give the microphone to Diane right now, and she's going to talk about a few things. Go.
I hate when you do that because I don't know how to talk that fast. Did everybody get a printed calendar? I know some of you are slowly walking in. If you didn't get one, I've got a whole stack of them here. We'll just sit them here. Please help yourself to them. We're not going to run over the whole calendar tonight just because we do have a lot to talk about, but there's two things I wanted to highlight. The first is March 17. That's the one marriage Saturday morning day discussion time together, okay? So that, just please make sure that's in your calendars. And the other thing that I wanted to highlight real quickly is on Saturday, April 21st, is the day we all agreed we were going to clean the church together. You like how I phrased that? So I was going to take some time and get everybody to physically volunteer or sign up, but I think we have a little time to do that. We can work toward that, and I don't really want to take the time to do it tonight. So please just mark your calendars for that, and then maybe at the March Core, I'll get your names and we'll try to get a crew together for that. I'm hoping just to get a big crew for a few hours to knock it out. Okay, the cleaning gentlemen have made two requests. The first is, please do not put cups with liquids in them in the trash. And if you want an example why, some really well-meaning person emptied a trash can, didn't realize the bag had liquid in it, and that's the little, I don't know if you've seen it the whole way down this aisle and out the door, but that's what happens. So please just don't put liquids in the trash can. Related, if you blow your nose into a tissue or cry into a tissue, please commit to throwing that tissue away. It's a little concerning this time of year for these guys to pick up spent tissues. They're not exactly sure what they're getting involved in. So please just take your tissues with you and throw those out. Monica, do you want to take 2 seconds and tell us about this?
Hi. So we talked. Really, Mark? Okay. Happy Valentine's Day. I think October-ish, we talked about generating more money as a church, just generating more income. And so one of the ways that we are going to do that is in the month of April, we have partnered with in March, we have partnered with Recycle Local. So for all of you people like me who made that commitment of spring cleaning and decluttering and getting that stuff out of your house, you can gather it all, and you will see probably in the next 10 days or so, a trailer is going to show up in our parking lot, and they will pay us by the pound. So the really cool thing about that is those clothing, household items, you can get rid of them for free instead of trying to figure out, I drive around with that crap in my car for weeks until my husband gets really mad and pulls it out. So you don't have to do any of that. And in the next couple days, Diane's going to start posting things on the Who family page and on the Who website that will outline specifically what is permissible and what isn't. And where you come in is not only cleaning out your house, but spreading the word. Put it on all your social media stuff.
Clean out other people's houses.
Or that. Or do it the easy way and just ask them. Yeah, ask them, your friends, family, whatever, but let them know. I mean, they're going to be able to see the truck from, we have a great location. And the goal, hopefully, is to maybe fill it more than once over the month of March. But they pay us by the pound. So it's pretty amazing and free money. So join in.
Thank you, Monica.
Isn't that cool?
Monica, great idea. No, she's going to.
No, there is there is a list of things you can't bring. We're going to put it all on the website, and then you can look from there. TVs.
How about people that have weights that they don't use anymore?
Give them to Steph.
No, they go in the truck because they're heavy.
That's all I have, Mark.
Unless you want to give us a better deal than the truck gives us. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm done. You may have it now.
Ashley Wiley.
Ashley Wiley. Here you go, dear.
I'm going to read to you. Mark, what?
If they brought their Bibles, have them open.
Yeah, Bibles. Psalm 145. That's where we're going. But some of the other leaders are going to speak more to this. We want to be on the same page here. Or you can close your eyes and listen, whatever floats your boat. Yeah.
Do we have questions?
No, just listening. Psalm 145. I will extol you, my God, O King, and I will bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you, and I will praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and highly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall praise your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts. On the glorious splendor of your majesty, and on your wonderful works I will meditate. Men shall speak of the power of your awesome acts, and I will tell of your greatness. They shall eagerly utter the memory of your abundant goodness, and will shout joyfully of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and great in loving kindness. The Lord is good to all, and his mercies are over all his works. All your works shall give thanks to you, O God, and your godly ones shall bless you. They shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and talk of your power, to make known to the sons of men your mighty acts and the glory of the majesty of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. The Lord sustains all who fall and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due time. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in all his ways and kind in all his deeds. The Lord is near to all who call upon him, and to all who call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He will also hear their cry and will save them. The Lord keeps all who love him, but all the wicked he will destroy. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you want to say to that? That stuck out to you?
The parts that stuck out to me, I'm sure you're probably going to touch on, but in verses, it's like starting with 11, you can kind of see the repetition. They shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and talk of your power. Make known to the sons of men your mighty acts and the glory of your kingdom. Speaking, talking, making known him.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Thank you. Originally, we were just going to read a couple verses from Psalm 145, but the more I read it today, the more I just wanted to read the entire chapter to you. As we were praying together, as I prayed with the Lord in November and December of 2017, the word jealousy was coming to my mind a lot. And not in the bad, negative sense that you've heard the word jealousy used before. I actually felt the Lord being jealous for his own name. And I don't know how else to describe this other than, and maybe this was my own feeling that I was attributing to the Lord, and I asked him about this. I said, am I just feeling this way? And I don't know. You always think the Lord affirms you. At least I do. So I felt affirmed in the Lord saying, I'm jealous for my own name. I'm jealous for my name's sake, is what I actually heard him say. And so, just to quickly summarize what I think and I see personally for us in this 2018 year, is I think the Lord wants to make himself known among us. We have spent the last 6+ years at Who, almost 7 years now, focusing on the identity of who we are as sons and daughters. And it has been a beautiful process for me personally, both for me personally, as well as me personally watching us all together come into this beautiful realization that we're beloved sons and daughters of a Father who absolutely adores us. I'm so thankful. In that process is an inherent danger, and I've shared this with you guys before. Excuse me. And the inherent danger is that when you talk about identity enough, you can have the train go off the rails just a little bit, and the focus becomes on us, ourselves, our own identity. And, you know, being a father, having 4 children and watching them grow, it's an important part that they know who they are, that they have a strong understanding of their value, their worth, so that when they are interacting with people that don't necessarily value them the way mom and dad do, they can sustain themselves in the midst of any other environment that wouldn't value them the way we do.
What does it mean to sustain?
To sustain means to keep up, to maintain. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want my kids to sustain that value in an environment that might not encourage it like mom and dad have. That's important. But ultimately, the goal of identity is not ourselves. The goal of identity is the one who gave it to us. And just on a personal note, I will tell you that probably on the second half of 2017, I personally started seeing some of the danger signs of identity. I started seeing lives focused on what an individual believed for themselves. I heard a lot, and not just among us, I actually heard it in society, I heard it in mainstream media, terms like my truth or your truth, which was really nothing more than, hey, you can have your own opinion and it's your truth. And it started to concern me as a friend, as a father, as a leader, as a brother, as someone who I think has the heart of the Father. I got concerned that people were starting to call their truth, truth. And the results were that the center of an individual's universe was becoming less and less about Jesus and more about them. And I was personally becoming concerned. And I'm not pointing at anyone in this room. I'm talking about a generic feeling and experience I was having. And on top of that, I also felt this desire of the Father that now the point of you and I recognizing our incredible worth as sons and daughters is that reflection would ultimately bring glory to the one who gave us this unbelievable worth, who is the Father. Ultimately, a son's greatest purpose is to bring glory to the Father. And so my desire is that 2018, and I actually believe it's the Lord's for us, is that our sonship begin to make the Lord known again. So for lack of a better term, I'm kind of using the phrase making the Lord known as our vision and theme for 2018. That everything we're learning, all of this growth, all of this maturity, all of this understanding that we're gaining, is it turning into the Lord being known? Him being more famous? And I'll give you simple examples of this. When I think of salt, yeast, and light. Those are 3 major themes that Jesus uses to describe us. He calls us the salt of the earth. Now, when I eat anything that has been salted, unless it's overly salted, I don't think about salt. I think about what I'm eating. Am I right? Anyone that's ever cooked, if you salt correctly, it actually brings out the flavor of that which was salted. Am I right? Just making sure. Now, too much salt and you go, oh gosh, give me a drink, it's too salty. What the point of salt is it brings forth the flavor of that which it goes into. So the focus isn't the salt, the focus is the meat or the food or whatever it is. With yeast, I never eat a piece of bread thinking this was awesome yeast. Anybody else? No, what the yeast does is it blows up the bread. It makes the bread more edible. It gives the bread much more ability to do incredible things like an incredible sandwich that you can't make with flat bread. Well, I guess you can, but you don't get as much out of it. Again, the yeast, it's not about the yeast, it's about the bread. And then the light. Let's think about this. No one walks in this room and looks up at these things and say, wow, what cool light. No, the whole point of the light is it illumines what's in the room. The value of the light is what it makes known. And so for me, as I began to think about this, I'm like, I hope we don't forget the purpose of realizing who we are as sons and daughters. And I think Jesus is the ultimate example of this. He constantly, when anyone would try to come to him and try to give the attention to him, he would continually put the focus back on his Father and say, my Father himself loves you. Ask anything in my name and my Father will give it to you. When you've seen me, you've seen the Father. When the fullness of the Godhead was seen in Jesus, it was to make known his Father. I want that to be our goal. Ultimately, you're beautiful people, incredible people. I'm so thankful that I've watched so many of you grow in your confidence, in your understanding, in your value. I mean, you're kick-ass people. I'm sorry, can I say that? I don't even know if I can say that. I'm just saying it. You are. As I think about any one of you in particular, I love what I see. Now can we take who we are and shine the light and put the salt and the yeast into what it was created for? Put ourselves into this thing. I mean, it says, the very verses that she just read here, it's 11. They shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and talk of your power, to make known to the sons of men your mighty acts and the glory of the majesty of your kingdom. Up a little further, it talks about that one generation shall praise your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. On the glorious splendor of God's majesty and his wonderful works, I will meditate. I'll be honest with you, I probably don't spend enough personal time meditating on the mighty acts and wonderful works of God. But I think if I did, then my life would even more naturally illumine the Lord and cause him to be known. So that's my personal desire, and I'd like that for us to be our corporate vision for this year. That everything we do, down to the very, and we'll hear nitty-gritty is like about our marriages and how we parent, to how we go to work each day, to about what we do in ministry and the things that are on our hearts to do in the earth. I pray that everything about it ultimately points to the King, to the Father who loves every one of these people we touch. How's that sound?
Great.
I like it. So if we're to be an empowered family, advancing the Father's culture in all the earth, then identity and sonship must be about him. Our lives and glory declare his glory. Our decisions, our steps of faith, even the expansion, are for him and his kingdom. Sometimes I have to remind myself that the expansion I desire is not just for my own benefit. My growth, if I want to start a new business in the next 5 years, if I want to expand into the nations, it's not so that my ministry would be expanded. I know that this sounds like, but it's an important reminder for me personally. The next mission trip I go on, is it going to be so that the actual name of the Lord is extended and proclaimed and known and seated? May the love of the Father actually be known by other people. I want that for myself. I want that for him. I want that for every person that I'm involved with. So we see ourselves graduating, this is what I see, from esteeming the two great commands of the Old Testament. What are the two great commands Jesus told us that sum up the entire New Old Testament law? Love the Lord. Right. So, now what we didn't do, love the Lord your God, keep going. Right. What's the standard of loving the Lord your God in that verse? Well, keep going. All what? All your heart. All your strength. All your mind, right? The standard of love is your own strength. Now, has anybody discovered that your strength is limited? Have you ever run out of it? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So, the standard of love in the Old Testament is us. Even to the point of love your neighbor. What's the standard? So there's something better. And Jesus actually gives us a new commandment. Now remember what the new commandment Jesus gives his disciples is? Okay, I'll tell you. That you love one another. Oh, the standard changes. Do you hear that? Now it's no longer love one another as you can love them. It's love one another as Jesus loves them. Guys, that is an unending, infinite standard of love. You cannot run out of love when Jesus is the standard of love, when He's the source of it. And do you hear how He actually wants to take it from us and the sourcing and the standard of it being us to the New Testament? And I hear the two great commands way more in the church today than I hear this command. Anybody else? I regularly hear, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I regularly hear, love your neighbor as yourself. I don't hear, love one another as I have loved. I want that to be our standard. When you are frustrated, when you think you've run out of love, in that moment, you need to switch your sourcing. You have to realize, I'm in Old Testament. This is how Moses loved. He got ticked off, complained to God about the people. But I don't have to. Because the love that Jesus has for this person is in me. Hello?
Yep.
Huge challenge for me, guys. Huge challenge for me personally. I can tell you, I seem to run out of love more than I'm comfortable with. I come to the end of my fuse. Sometimes my fuse is way shorter than I'd like it to be. I know I'm in the right room. But my fuse doesn't even have to exist because of Him. If He becomes our standard, and love is truly how we choose to see and treat one another, there is no end to it. That's why I think Paul says love is patient. So if you struggle with patience, don't try to get more patience. Walk in more love. If you're running out of kindness, if you're running out of any of those things, love is. If you're really doing well at record of wrongs, don't erase them. Start loving the one who you're keeping the record of. It's all summed up in that for me. Okay, anyway. So, like I asked this question, I kind of said this earlier, but I'm reading notes here. So this is what happens when I have notes. Are we so enamored with our sonship that we have forgotten who our sonship points to? Ben said this, and I thought this was really powerful. Sonship is milk. Eating of Jesus is meat and will bring muscle to our identity. Because in John 12, He says, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men to myself. Look, I think I've said this to many of you before. I have no desire for people to be drawn to World Harvest Outreach. I do not desire that. I do not want a big church because we have really cool worship and we can seem to figure out how to preach really well. I do not want that. I want Jesus known. And if people come, they come because of Him. So I want to continually set Him as center, as standard, as the one who's the most important person in the room. I will never leave that standard as long as I live. And as long as I'm the leader here, Jesus will continue. And I might need a reminder of this sometimes because I can get a little mission focused too. So help me out, okay? Family? All right, thank you. We want to keep Jesus there because if He is lifted up, if He's exalted, if He's the one who is our life and the focus of our energy, He'll draw all men. Hello? That's real church growth for me. I am not interested in any kind of seeker-sensitive garbage. That's why you don't see us doing things that we think might get more people to the church. I only want to do one thing. I want to exalt the name of the Lord. I want to continue to establish and esteem His presence above all things. That's why sometimes worship is an hour and 45 minutes. I'm sorry. And then sometimes it's 45 minutes to an hour. Guys, just deal with it. I'm looking for Him. And if we see Him in worship, I promise you, we ain't going anywhere. But if we're just singing songs, we're going to end. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Good. I knew you would be. So, Mrs. Derniak, would you come and join me? This is my Valentine. Hi.
Hi.
You want to share a few words? Let's start short on.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was. Okay. So, does everyone have these papers or no? No. Okay.
So we can say whatever we want.
Okay. Or I can just read it. So, as Mark was talking a little bit about love is our standard, and sometimes I just feel myself, like he was sharing, that I need to up my own standard, which whenever we say we're comparing it to the Father and the Lord, that's a pretty high standard to live up to. But I know that it's on the inside of each of us to love bigger than we currently do. I'm sure we can all say there's room for us to love a little better. So I'm just, so I love that love is our standard and that he is our standard of love. Mm-hmm. It's a very good thing, though. And so, appropriately on Valentine's Day, marriage is a perfect opportunity. Not all of you are married, but marriage can now become more about revealing Jesus and the bride and how it so beautifully shows the Father's love for us. So, and anything else you want to add to that?
The continued focus on that, Ben and Jen might talk about that a little bit more as far as some of the things we'll be doing.
Yeah,
but
more specifically, things throughout the year.
I think having a great marriage is wonderful just because it keeps peace. And it creates like a happy home for children. But the Bible really talks about the reason for marriage. It's supposed to be a picture. It's supposed to reveal a greater glory. So back to making the Lord known, my love for her and her love back to me actually establishes the government of the Lord in the earth. We say this a lot, but I don't mind repeating it. This was the original government. Mm-hmm. And if we can establish ongoing peace, a greater strength between she and I, then I actually think the earth comes into agreement. And ultimately, I think we demonstrate what Jesus and all of us are together. So I think the continued emphasis on marriage is so valuable and important. I want to thank Ben and Jen for keeping that in front of us. And honestly, I want to thank you all because I think you take it really seriously. As I think about the married couples in this room, like, I just want to tell you, I honor you for not giving up on one another and for sticking in it and being careful and being considerate and being thoughtful, even when things are rough and tough. So, good job. Sorry.
And then you also mentioned something earlier about the most important person in the room is Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we get to the point where like I remember one specific Sunday years ago, Mark and I just looked at each other with our mouths kind of dropped like, yes, we know that, but how did we
get off course?
How did we get here? And how do we get back there? Mm-hmm. So even though it's okay to be reminded that Jesus is the most important person in the room and just to line ourselves up accordingly. And sometimes, in talking about love, our love for each other means we do not fall into feeding each other's flesh, which kind of goes along with that in a way but we lovingly feed their spirits. Mm-hmm. And talking about here, but also talking about friendships, relationships within the family. Does that make sense, the difference between the two? Because in our family, and especially in our Sunday morning gatherings, we can loving and gently, faithfully guide one another to the person of Jesus and resist falling short into an emotional, powerless encounter.
I actually think it might be okay with the family core here that you could share the example that you experienced. I think it's okay.
And this, I don't think this happens often, but there was a particular Sunday morning where it was obvious there was a different type of ministry happening, and it wasn't spirit-led, but it was more, if I can just describe it a little bit to differentiate. Like whenever it's of the Spirit, you can just see it naturally flowing. It's organic. It's not drawing attention away from the Father, but it's bringing someone is being ministered to and healed within the setting of a Sunday morning, but you can just tell the difference. And just one particular Sunday, I noticed it was a little more like striving. Like, okay, this needs attention. Let me go get this person and bring him right here. Oh, that's not enough. Let me go get this person and bring. So it was more like contrived, had to be forced, and it wasn't just naturally flowing and bringing. It was kind of bringing attention, not to the Father, but to that specific thing. So.
Well, let me talk to you a little bit about that, because I think one of the things the Lord's going to do for us, not only in this year, but in the coming years, as we mature in our identity as sons and daughters, we're going to be able to discern the difference between flesh and spirit. And I do pray that for all of us. Because there will be people that come into your life, come into our gatherings, come into a situation, want us to join into their emotional vortex. Come and join me in this tornado of feelings and drama that I have. Has anybody ever experienced that? I just want to make sure you're human. Because you might have even had those vortexes in your own life before. And the wisest people in our lives will not join us in the tornado. Because you have no footing in the vortex. You have to stay outside of it on the solid ground of Jesus and live by the Spirit. But the emotional pull of that thing can be so strong that if you're not careful, you'll think the strength means spirit. And it's not true. I have experienced people's emotions so strong that it has the same intensity as when the Holy Spirit anoints me. People have invested that much of their own selves and identity in how they're feeling that when they come in and they say they have a great need, please join me in this need, it feels like if I don't, I'm actually disobeying God. And it's not true. And I'm praying for us all that we would know the difference between natural and spirit, between flesh and spirit. In this particular case, it was very obvious that this person was drawing others into their emotional state. But it was not Spirit-led ministry at all. And to her point, people had to get dragged over, called over to help with ministry. I can promise you, I trust you all enough in your maturity. When you know the Lord's on somebody and working on somebody, we don't have to ask a single person to join. You are drawn by the Spirit. Trust the Spirit in you this year. Trust the Spirit enough that you know, nope, that's an emotional vortex. I'm not pulling myself in. Because you can't help anybody once you're spinning too. You are of no help to that person once you're drawn in. To live by the Spirit. Remember in Galatians 5 or 6. Is it 6? Where it says, you who are spiritual, these are the ones that are supposed to bear one another's burdens. Because if you're not living by the Spirit, and you want to in love, because you think this is the loving thing to do. This is really important, guys. I hope you're hearing my heart here. This will save you so much pain when you're trying to help other people. If you are spiritual, you'll not get sucked into the vortex. You'll be able to stand outside of it and not feel like not being drawn into the drama is somehow not being loving, because it is not. You can stand outside of it and say, I am not joining in that stuff, and you're actually loving them better. Are you hearing me? Yeah. And then from this place, you can speak of the Spirit. There are many I have seen who think they're helping people, and all they're doing is falling down in the ditch with them. You don't help anybody by being in the ditch with them. You help them by staying up in the high ground and standing and like this and lifting them up and out. So I pray for you this year that we would all together discern flesh from spirit.
Yeah. And sometimes that vortex can be happening without a word even being said. Mm-hmm. Like, kind of happened a little bit this week to me. Someone was in a vortex and I actually saw it. It was apparent. I tried to offer help. They didn't want the help. So I'm even now being affected by their vortex, but I'm trying to just love them in a different place. So whenever their vortex slows down
or at least
then I can offer them something if they're willing, but I can't force it. I just have to be there whenever it slows down. I don't want to get caught in that vortex.
Yeah.
So when it is spirit, you may have to encourage a little, or you might have to help get a little bit of support, but it won't look contrived or arranged or manipulated, or, it'll just be natural, it'll be organic.
Yep.
And genuine. Yes, and we will discern the difference between emotional power and spirit power. So, and I don't want to get confused, because I do believe that natural and spirit go together. Like, I really believe that things of the spirit must have a physical manifestation, like a natural manifestation, but not to be confusing with natural and flesh.
Those are two different things.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing. We've talked about this before, but I think it's important to remind you. Wisdom will not get involved in the problem. Have you ever noticed that? When you go and seek wisdom from somebody, I've told this story before. I remember I was really in a deep situation with business, and I called the most wise businessman I knew, and I sat down with him, and I was so frustrated because for an hour and a half I was explaining and re-explaining and coming from different directions trying to explain the problem I was having in business, and the guy had absolutely nothing for me. And it took me years to look back on that, because I was actually frustrated for about 2 years. Like, how come that guy didn't have the wisdom that got me out of my situation? And I'm so glad that as I look back now, I realize that situation just needed to fall apart. Wisdom will not come in and fix a current problem, because in most cases, problems have been sourced by something much farther and deeper than the current situation. Wisdom waits for that problem to subside, and the problem is we're so connected to the problem that we think if it fails, I fail. And it's not true. Wisdom knows that that's not true. So wisdom's not afraid to let a thing completely fall apart and then come in and say, are you ready to start again? Because wisdom's foundational. Wisdom will start again once the vortex and the tornado moves on. So it's really important that sometimes it is the most loving thing to do is to wait for the cow that's spinning up in the tornado to finally just fall. Please hear me. I know that doesn't sound loving. You think that you're going to go up there and help them juggle the cow and the flying truck and all that kind of stuff that's in the tornado? No, honestly, they just need to crash. That doesn't sound loving, but it's the most loving thing we can do. You guys hearing me? Yeah. Anything else on that?
No. So love is our standard.
Yep. Cool. All right, so what we're going to do tonight, we're doing two things. We're trying to tie our core values in with what we're seeing for 2018. And we're also bringing different members of our leadership team up here to establish both the things that we're seeing for 2018 in with our core values. So Kendall, actually Chris, did you want to come? Yeah. Do you have some things here before we move on to identity-driven action? There were some things that Chris sent me today I thought were really good. You got stuff for both. Perfect. Yeah. Then you just bring Kendall up.
Okay.
Cool.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
So I've been spending a little bit of time here lately in Titus, which is a very small letter from Paul. And it's mostly concerning, the first two chapters of it is mostly concerning with leadership, church leadership, how it should look and all that kind of stuff. But toward the end, the third chapter is all about how we should basically live with each other and interact with each other. And so I've spent a little bit of time studying that and what it looks like. And I wanted to read a few verses to you guys from Titus 3. Let me pull up my notes. I got notes too. All right, 3, 1, and 2 first, and then we'll skip down to 5 and 7. I got a little explanation for it as well. So 1 is, remind them to be subject to rulers, to authorities, to be obedient, and to be ready for every good deed, to malign no one, to be peaceable, gentle, showing every consideration for all men. And then we hop down to 5. He saved us, not on the basis of deeds which we have done in righteousness, but according to his mercy, by the washing of regeneration and renewing by the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out upon us richly through Jesus Christ our Savior, so that being justified by his grace, we would be made heirs according to the hope of eternal life. So that last verse, verse 7, really started just sitting on me, man. I started just digging in. So I wanted to do kind of a word search into this just to see exactly what that meant in the Greek back in that time. So I did a little Greek search on it. And So the word justified in this comes from the Greek dikayahu. I'm probably saying that completely wrong, but it essentially means to declare, pronounce one to be just, righteous, or such as he ought to be. Noun to made is gin amohahi, to be made or finished, and then heirs is clay ron omos, is one who receives his allotted possession by righteous or right of sonship. So when we look at this, and then the last one on here is life, and in this specific context, it's the Zoe life that, you know, what you've probably heard, I don't even know how many times from this pulpit, what Zoe is and where it came from. To give you a quick background, if I may, is the Zoe life is life real and genuine, a life active and vigorous, devoted to God, blessed. Zoe life is often referred to in the Bible, like anytime you see the word life, there's usually only 3 different versions in the Greek that you see. But the one you see most often is Zoe life, and that is the life that God breathed into man in the beginning. So it is our vibrancy, our life from the Lord. And so if we rewrite verse 7, it would sound a little bit more like this. So that being as we should be, by his grace, we would be finished sons according to the hope of eternal life, or eternal Zoe, vibrance, living with each other. So for this, it has been mandated that we as heirs to the throne live our lives in a way that shows the glory of God to all that we encounter. That's something that I thought of after reading these verses. And basically what that means is that our daily relationships with one another, and even just random people that you meet on the street, should look just like your relationship with the Lord. Because you're meeting a piece of Jesus with every person that you encounter. So we should approach all of those relationships with the same love, the same thoughtfulness, the same everything in our daily walks with everybody. And as Mark had said earlier, knowing who we are in him, our identity is, as he said, the milk of being a kid, of learning how we fit in this whole grand puzzle. And then actually taking that a step further, going to step 2 and starting to walk this out with other people, what it will start to do is that in knowing your identity through him and interacting with other people in that identity, their spirit will connect with your spirit at a heart-to-heart level. They won't know what that means. They'll have no idea in the flesh what it means, like why they feel so drawn to you, why they want to be around you all the time, why they want to hear everything you have to say. But on a heart level, in their own spirit, they will feel it and they will be feeding off of it just the same as your relationship with the Lord, and you feed off of him. And by constantly cultivating those kinds of relationships and those kinds of interactions with people, you're essentially opening the floodgates of their own personal relationship with the Lord. You're showing them, or you're patterning to them what that could look like. So,
thank you, Chris. That is awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kendall, you're next up on this one. And then when he is done, I have a practical application for what he's talking about.
Awesome. Thank you. I love what Chris is saying, what's been said so far, because I'm going to speak for just a few moments about one of our core values, identity-driven action. But I think it helps, and Chris hit on this really well, that our identity is really his identity. It's not like our identity is separate from him. Our lives are hid with Christ in God. And so it's not like I'm developing my identity and getting that tweaked and worked out here, and that's independent of who he is. So as Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so that ultimately is a nice, if that's going to be a standard, are people going to see the Father when they see me, when they see you, when they see us? So sonship isn't just a goal. It's a goal to attain, and it's we've arrived. No, it's a position to launch from. You guys might remember, the familiar story with Zacchaeus. Okay, so he had to go into town, and he knew just what he was doing, stops under the tree, Jesus does, and says, Zacchaeus, come on down, I'm going to your house, right? And so we see, a lot of things in there, but the statement is made, the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. Okay, so that is, that's as a son, he's got intentional focus there. And we talked a lot about intentionality in the past, and rightly so. And so there's an intentionality to Jesus, and in making himself known, he was making the Father known, because he is the everlasting Father. And so he's in us, and we're in him. So if we're making ourselves known in him, we're making him known. Right? So we want to do a good job. We want to be intentional about how we're making him known. And what Dawn has said, what has been said so far, it's like our spirit-led actions. Our identity-driven actions are really spirit-led actions, which are really Jesus' Son-led actions, Father-led actions. So sometimes, there might be a pool of people that are really hurting, and Jesus walks around and steps over them, but to the one that was infirmed for 38 years, at that particular time, he healed. He might have come back the next day and healed others, we don't know. But there was an intentionality, is what I'm trying to say. So, we want to keep that word intentional as we're working, if you will, out of our identities. Does that make sense? Right? We just don't want to be like, on one hand, I'm a son, I can do whatever. That doesn't matter, I'm a son, I know who I am, right? Or the other end is like, I got to work. I got to work. I got to do everything. Somebody called, I got to do that. And, that can get in, we can be in multiple vortexes. We don't want that, right? So we want to be spirit-led, right, Gary? Yes. Okay. So, as some were putting together some thoughts on this, there was some just tremendous stuff that came out. And I just want to go over just a few points quickly. We know that identity is who we are, okay? And, what we do is to flow out of that. But so what we want to capture right there is that, identity is for something flowing out. Jesus said, look, if you don't believe what I say, believe for the work's sake. The works pointed to the Father. If we're going to make him known, we want to make sure we're doing Father-honoring works. And the way we can be guaranteed to do that is simply be filled with the Spirit and walk with the Father. And we can do that. Guys, we can do that. We can do that, right? We can really do that. But we want to be intentional. So if we're intentional about our focus on him, Jesus said, I only do what I see the Father doing. And I realized that in that, Jesus can see, and that meant he can see the Father in the future. It's not like, I saw the Father doing that, I saw him doing that, did you ever have somebody like, I know we've all done this, it's like, I can see so-and-so doing that. Right? You know what I mean, right? I was thinking about that. I can see them doing that. Yeah. Exactly, right? Well, that's what Jesus, he's like, I can see him healing that guy. And so I'm going to do that, right? So let me just go over a few things here. Okay, we're going to talk about opportunities. We all have opportunities. Let's be ready for the opportunities that come by, okay? If there's something that's a hang-up, I always want to go on a trip, but I never have enough money. Well, get the money. Just get the money. Okay, well, I don't know how to get the money. Okay, well, figure out how to get the money. Okay, but if it's a thing that you always want to do, I really feel the Lord leading me on this trip. Okay, if that's happened 2 or 3 times and you're like, dang, one of these days. Okay, just start figuring out how to get the money, because you know that there's going to be another opportunity that comes by. Okay, and it could be all kinds of things like, they want to take an offering. I didn't have any money with me. Well, carry some money with you. Just if you say, I don't have any extra money, well, get some extra money. You can really, there is plenty of money. Okay, but this isn't about money. Okay, take the financial thing, okay. I couldn't take it this time, but, okay. Now, we live in a community, so get involved in the community. You can't do everything, but you can do something. Right, Lauren? Yeah. There's all kinds of good things. And in that, we can make the Father known. Seriously, okay? Now, this, I think, was Leslie's thought, and I love this, guys. And correct me if this wasn't Leslie's, okay. Take opportunities to create powerful thoughts. When I heard that, I'm like, whoa. Take opportunities to create powerful thoughts. Engage our imagination, time, and vision to see what can be. You know, Mark just said, you know, he felt that, you know, he didn't always maybe just meditate on the Father's goodness. And I'm right there too, you know. But just to take some time and think, what can be? Just to imagine. I'm telling you, good stuff comes out of that. Lord, help us with that. Now, so this was one, and I think maybe Ben spoke to this. How can we have an influence on this thing in the world? Heal the heart of that thing in my life and the closest ones. How will this expand our authority? I'm going to just kind of give you my interpretation quickly about this. It's like, what am I holding in my heart? What speaks to my heart? What hits my heart? Is it a problem? Is it child trafficking? Is it feeding the hungry? Is it whatever it is? And take time to think about that, meditate on that prayerfully, okay? And begin to realize, am I holding that in my heart? That in itself is huge. Because to pray from that place of holding something in your heart, I'm telling you, phenomenal, okay? But in doing that, we might find out, oh, there's some barriers, there's some struggles, there's some hang-ups, or it might even expose something going on in our own heart. And we can then, that's an opportunity to deal with that thing. I was wounded. I'm, you know, ticked off about that, whatever, okay? But it's intentionally, this is all intentional identity-driven action. You see what I mean? I know I'm a son. These things are before me.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Please.
Yeah. So, you know, some of you that have already kind of started stepping out in what you feel the Lord's created you to do, you've probably discovered this like Dawn and I have, that having a heart for a thing and then actually doing it, you realize that first of all, doing it doesn't necessarily match the vision you had when you just had a heart for it. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
Just want to make sure that's okay. It's like reality doesn't always match the dream.
Right.
Secondly, I've discovered, and I know Dawn has too with me, that when you start walking out in what that thing was that was on your heart, it tests every part of your life. If your marriage isn't strong, if your relationships aren't strong, if your relationship with the Lord isn't strong, your finances, it will test all of those areas of your life. Right? Yeah, perfect example are the Fries right now. They decided to step out last year in what was on their hearts to do. And I can promise you, any weakness in their marriage, in their finances, whatever, this thing puts a spotlight on it. And it doesn't mean that they have a bad marriage or their finances are in ruins. It simply means we've added really good weight to our lives. And it's not a bad thing to add this weight. It's just make sure that you have the strength within whatever you currently have to carry that well. I think when I heard that, we want to make sure that every area of our life that could be connected to what's on our heart is healed and whole to the best of our ability before we decide to start adding that to our lives. Because we want it to sustain, back to Jason asking what that word means. We want it to last. We want it to grow so even other generations can pick it up and run farther with it than we did. But it means being intentional with our lives right now. Being whole and healthy. I think the words that you read from Titus 3 are so important. Am I being renewed and regenerated daily? So that whatever the Lord's adding to my life, I can hold it. I can steward it well.
Yeah, and just right along with that, that's so good. You know, you get this vision and you start to run with it, and then you run smack into all these barriers, right? One of the temptations is to heck with the vision, is to drop the vision, right? And I think it's back to the opportunity thing. Like, okay, so it stirred something up. It opened something up. And the vision might just be a hold. The vision's great. But if you drop the vision, you're going to walk away. You're going to back off from the thing that was stirred up, which Ben was talking about, deal with it. Mark's talking about deal with it. And it's like, oh, gee, I didn't know it was going to be like that. And okay, this wasn't for me now. This must not have been the Lord. And I back away. Well, then I haven't really, I've missed an opportunity. Several, see? So I think that's what we're talking about. At least that's what I got out of that, right? That this is all opportunity. This is all identity-driven action. Because, see, my identity moved me into action. Jesus' identity moved him into action. The Son of Man, that's Jesus, that's us, came to seek and to save that which was lost. It's not just telling people how to get to heaven. I'm sorry. We're already in heaven, but that's a different story. But it's about restoring. It's about restoration. Right? And so here, all this stuff in my heart started like, wow, this is a mess. Okay, great. Time to heal. Time to work on it. Okay, so moving along here. Okay, this is simple steps of application. We're talking about identity-driven action. Listen, there's stuff going on all over the place. So just, pray about it. It sounds like a cop-out, but no, like, okay, check, when we're praying, we're like, where's my heart drawn? Oh, I think I'll check that out. It's an after-school program. I'm going to volunteer maybe. Oh, I'll see if it's for me, okay? I'm not going to bail out the first time somebody throws up on me, Maybe the second, okay. But,
can I even take it a step further?
Yeah.
Some stuff you don't even have to pray about. If you see it, do it. One of the things I said in the 50-year vision, I don't know if you remember it or not, but the task at hand is the command of a son. You get to a place in your walk with God that whatever there is that needs to be done, I'll do it. Sons act that way. So some things, I think deciding to go take a nation for Jesus or start a after-school program, that's going to take some prayer.
Right.
But taking out the trash better not take prayer in this house. Hello? All right? There are some things that just need to be done because we're sons and daughters. Okay.
Just don't put your drinks in the trash, or check to see if there's any.
You don't have to pray about that
either. Okay, now I like this one too. A spiritual activity can be a very natural action. That's just what was spoken about there. This needs done. I'm going to do it. Okay, and we have stuff around here that needs done. We all have stuff. There's stuff here. And finally, if your spiritual experience does not turn into a natural outlet, you are a hoarder. I love that. That sounds like something Ben would say. But think about it. I don't want to be a spiritual hoarder. Like, oh man, the Lord, I'm getting all these revelation. I'm like, oh geez, the Lord's. Well, where's the outlet? Where's the outlet? Okay, identity-driven action. The Son came to seek and to save that which was lost. I got lost stuff in me. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, if you don't let it out. Well, the Dead Sea has no outlet. Okay, go figure. Okay, so Chris.
All right, back to me. I actually have scripture to back everything he just said. Believe it or not.
I believe it.
And oddly enough, it is again in Titus. So it's a little bit further down in that same chapter 3 when he's talking about how we should interact with each other. And it is verse 8. See, this is a trustworthy statement. And concerning these things, I want you to speak confidently, so that those who have believed God will be careful to engage in good deeds. These things are good and profitable for men. So not only will it feed your spirit, but it's really good for you. It will feed your body as well, and especially if you're out here, working a shovel in the spring. It'll definitely feed your body. So practicing what I was talking about earlier, as far as your relationships, I can understand it can be a little awkward with coworkers. doing different things like that, showing, walking up to somebody and saying, "Hey, man, I love you." You're probably going to get looked at a little weird in the break room for a little while. But the one thing that we want to remember is that we don't want to shut down completely in our daily interactions. And I will be the first one to admit that I am so guilty of this. There are times I get home from work and I'm like, if I have to talk to one more person, I'm going to punch them in the face, And it wasn't until I came home with that same attitude one day that the Lord said the same thing to me. He says, "I want to punch you in the face right now." And I'm like, okay, well, I'll work on that, So carrying this love for others is a way of service to something other than yourself. And that's a lot of what Titus is talking about. It's like it's not all about us on this world. There's a lot of things that we do for us, and it's good. But there's a lot of things that we need to do for others. And volunteering, like Kendall said, at the church or the shelter, or just, and I even brought this down to just walking down the street in Chambersburg sometime. If you have nothing else better to do, go get a coffee, walk down the street, and find somebody to talk to. Because I guarantee some weirdo is going to want to tell you their full life story. And that's awesome, man, because then you can connect to that person and you can find out the piece of Jesus that he hid in that person. And that is one of if you approach every encounter that way, there will be no more weirdos on the street. Come on, Chris. And I'll close that by saying that I've worked in service industries growing up, and I've traveled a lot. And I've got to say that some of the most heartfelt, deep, and just amazing conversations with people that I've had have been with random people in airports. And whenever I used to work at a parts counter, guys would come up and want to tell me their entire life story, and I'd start off with like, "Oh, Lord, just buy your part and walk out," But by the end of it, I'm like, "Oh, man, there's a practical application that you got for this. Let me tell you something that I ran into one time." And just those human interactions are what keep us grounded and keep us, honestly, with our relationship with the Lord and with our relationship with other people. It just strengthens all of that greatly. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes. And I think next is Ben and Jen.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our core values, which is authentic family. And so anyone probably who knows us as a family, Delgados, we love to talk a lot about just the practical walking out in our everyday lives. And so just talking about this, making the Father known in the earth, in that passage that Ashley shared, that 21, the last verse, 21, "My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever." And I was just drawn to that word flesh, that, there's this kind of what, going back to what Mark was saying in the beginning, where there's like this rubber meets the road of, we can talk about our sonship and we can value it, but then there's like this calling up of us as sons and daughters, where there's this sifting out of those who just love the idea and those who are going to live it, those who are going to walk it. And in our identity, we've learned that what we do is not who we are, but we can't be who we are without doing things. And so I just feel like this calling up of us, like it's time to do, like it's time to let's be real cheesy, be the change. But really, there isn't an atmosphere that I shouldn't walk into that things don't shift. If I am who he says that I am, and if I'm going in every room with him. So, that. And then also as a family here, we desire to continue to foster a safe and open environment, to begin to practice those things, to step out, to take risks, to make mistakes in a safe environment. Because anything new that we're stepping out in or learning, we're going to mess up, right? And that's okay. And here is a safe place to mess up. One of the things that Ben says a lot that I really love is that, like, in terms of our open mic culture, that can be a really scary thing, especially for people who did not experienced that in other churches growing up. And he said, you know what, things that are said out on the microphone or out in the open, like we can deal with that. Like it's the things in the hidden places that are harder, right? Because we can't see them, we can't hear them. So we continue to, even as mistakes are made, we will not shrink back in fear, right? We will continue to be an open, safe place where people can explore this identity that we have, and also in exploring how do we fully express who our Father is and make him known in the earth. And then Mark brought to us this teaching, Lester Summerall, is that how you say his name? So he was talking about the 5 steps to possession, to like demonic possession. And it was really incredible. He brought this to us as leaders, and we were discussing it this week, but they build upon one another. So don't like hear one of these steps and think, okay, I'm at risk. It's kind of a gradual building upon. But no, the first step they talked about was discouragement. And so in that place of discouragement, we have an opportunity, right? We have choices that we can make. And often when we're choosing to live or stay in that place of discouragement, we can at times respond in the way opposite of what our soul needs, and that is to isolate. When we're feeling discouraged, we need our brothers and sisters. We need our family more than ever. But when we respond in isolation, then there's another step, that deception. Okay, lies. The lies of this discouragement, wait a second, what if this is true? And I start to think on that and start to dwell on that. And from that voice of deception, now there's no family around me to kind of feed back on this with me, then there's a place where oppression can begin to build strongholds in my thoughts, in my heart. And then the 5th step ultimately being just then an opportunity for possession there. And so that's like a really heavy topic. But think of the beginning place and the choices that we have. We all experience discouragement, but in those places, that's when we cling to our family. We run to our family. And so on that note, one of the things that we talked about in 2017 that is, again, just a tenet for us as a family, reconcile relationships that are broken. Some of us have made huge steps, and some of us had shared, which I love hearing those stories, because that's such a difficult place, especially some of the really intimate relationships that have been broken. But reconcile, seek after reconciliation, actively seek restoration. And a lot of times, we hear this all the time, the most mature repents first. Right. Like sometimes we are not at fault, but we are the only ones that will take a first step. And so sometimes that means saying sorry when maybe we don't feel like there's something to say sorry about. But yeah. He said there's usually something you can find to. But yeah, seek after restoration, reconcile relationships. This year, just as last year. And don't be surprised if you hear that in 2019 also. It's a good one. It's a really good one. Seeking a relationship in the community that expands our influence. So a lot of us, we kind of have different spheres. We may have like our Who family, and then we have our jobs. Some of us, we have, especially depending on your phase of life, younger parenting, sometimes our home is our sphere, and then our church, on Sundays. Actively pursue, even toddling our kids along with us into the supermarket. Anywhere that we go, there's opportunity for us to share who the Father is. And so that's just an encouragement on our heart to begin to seek relationships beyond what may be comfortable for us right now, to begin to expand the influence of this incredible culture that we get to be a part of. And then going, that's one point of going out, but then who can we bring in? Who are those that we are touching, we are expanding influence, that we can say, hey, come and be a part of our family here. And being part of our family, we are a smaller part of a greater family. And so Jocelyn brought this point to us, how really important it is that different people, that can be just connecting them with someone in their local community. That may not be us. But let's encourage like this this value of authentic family. Some people are not used to living this way, and they don't even know what it looks like, and they don't even know how to ask for it or how to recognize that they need it or their hearts are crying out for it. So let's be seeking for those ones. How can we draw them in to us, and then how can we connect them to a consistent place of community and family? Authentic family. That's it. Ben.
Thank you. All right. Just going back to what Jen said, that reconciling a relationship was something that we put on our goals for last year, and is back on for this year. But restoration is one of our core values. So when we say, "Oh, don't be surprised if it's on next year's," that's because these are the things we're never walking away from. Our core values: Jesus is the center, authentic family, restoration. They're the non-negotiables of our family. So, but we want to talk about another area of restoration, because we could talk about the reconciling and restoration of relationships, but the scriptures are pretty clear about how we're transformed. How are we transformed? By the renewing of our mind, which is another word for restoring. So the question that we have, and something that I really want us to focus on this year, is: are you thinking about the way that you think? Are you taking time to take inventory on how you think? Not if you're thinking, but how you think. Because honestly, we tell a lot of people to think, but if your thinking is broken, probably thinking is a bad thing. Does that make sense? So taking inventory about our thinking and our thought process is going to be is an important understanding that we can take for breakthrough this year. We can actually think better. And the only way that we are going to think better is if we take time to assess ourselves and think about the way that we think. So when we're thinking about the way that we think, where is the fruit coming? Is the fruit coming from the Father's Spirit, or is it coming from our flesh? Because I can guarantee you the thoughts that are birthed out of your flesh are usually thoughts that are going to bring destruction to you. But thoughts birthed out of the Spirit, out of who the Father is going to grow you. You know, I have a plan for you, a plan to what? To prosper you. These are the thoughts of the Father. Now, the prospering part can be hard. It could come with a lot of bumps. It could come with a lot of things, but ultimately they prosper you, and thoughts birthed in the flesh will bring destruction. So, I want to read this portion of Scripture. Let's go to, I'm going to read it for you. It's in 2 Corinthians 10, if you don't believe that I'm actually reading. And this version's actually pretty strongly worded, so I like it. But you're going to recognize it pretty easily. For although we live in the natural realm, we don't wage a military campaign employing human weapons, using manipulation to achieve our aims. Instead, our spiritual weapons are energized with divine power to effectively dismantle the defenses behind which people hide. I think that's an awesome way to describe that. It talks about fortresses, and actually separates the fortress from the people in this way. So I'll read it again. Our spiritual weapons are energized with divine power to effectively dismantle the defenses which people hide. We can demolish every deceptive fantasy that opposes God and break through every arrogant attitude that is raised up in defiance of the true knowledge of Him. Okay, now this is cool. We capture, like prisoners of war, every thought and insist that they bow in obedience to Jesus, the Anointed One. Love it. Now, We can look at the we in two ways. We can look at it as the individual we, like we're all in the same room, but we as individuals need to do this thing. And that is true. We as in I and everybody in this room, I need to take my thoughts captive to the obedience of the Anointed One, Jesus. But there's another we that we actually should be looking at, and it's the we of us together. Your thoughts in isolation, like Jen was talking about, your thoughts in isolation is a breeding ground for the enemy to play his games. Okay? So what happens is when we have the thoughts that turn into deception is because we isolated our thoughts because we were worried about what somebody thought about our thoughts. And now what happens is the enemy is running rampant and he cannot come, or the thought cannot come into submission of Jesus, who ultimately it needs to come into submission. Now it's interesting to me that he's not looking for us to demolish those thoughts and eradicate those thoughts. He's actually looking for us to change the way that we think and have those thoughts come into submission of Jesus. He's not saying get rid of them. He's saying have those thoughts understand where the authority is. So when we're thinking about the way that we think, what we then can do is say, hey, is the way that I think submitted to the Anointed One, Jesus? Now, we talked about sonship being milk. We talked about ultimately the goal being the Father, right? The standard is the Father. And I think it's really, really awesome that this verse says, or does not say first, we insist that your thoughts are obedience to your understanding of your identity. It does not say that. Okay? Your truth. It does not say that. Okay? Because your truth, or even your understanding of truth, is far superior or far inferior to who is superior in Jesus. So when I bring my thoughts to Jesus, when I bring my thoughts to my own understanding of myself, ultimately that thought is going to revert back to being destructive to me because it will become all about me. But if I bring that thought to the submission of Jesus Christ, because he is constant and unwavering and he's always himself, he will have better thoughts for you than you will have for you. Okay? So, if I can get over this hurdle of thinking that even my thoughts for me are better than his thoughts for me, then I'll see breakthrough. Now, one of the keys is we need to understand what's a flesh thought and what's a spirit thought. And that's sometimes hard. Okay? So there's something that we do, and we talk about a very natural activity that can reveal spiritual things. We do an activity, and I do a lot of continuous improvement work, like lean work and stuff like that, if you know what that is. Basically, we want to be more productive and more efficient. So we look for ways to make processes better. That's kind of my job. All right? There's an activity that we do, and it's called 5 Whys. Okay? It's a 5 Why activity. So every time we are actually looking at any process, we ask the question why. And then we ask the question why again. And we ask the question why again. And we keep asking the question based off the answer to the next why, until we get to a root cause. Way too much of our time is spent on easing the symptoms of our issues than getting down to the root of our issues. Way too much time. So you've taken cough medicine for all your life, but you don't know you have tuberculosis. And there's something that can fix that so that you could stop coughing, but you know what? Cough medicine costs $7 and it's right there at the store. Well, getting in here and fixing it is going to be a lot more involved process. So we ask this 5 why. You know, more times than not, when we ask these 5 whys, we truly get down to a root cause. And I'll give you an example. So we like to blame associates for just not caring about things. And I'll tell you one thing right now: a bad process will beat a good person every time. somebody's just will and intention to do good will always succumb to us having a bad process. The Father even figured that out when he said, hey, you know what? This first covenant isn't working. Let's put in this second covenant, right? So the Father even modeled it for us. So most times we'll say, oh, the associate's not doing the job that they need to do. Why? Well, they didn't have the tool for their job. Why? Because I didn't supply it. Oh, I was the problem the whole time. And you'll find that if you can stop and think about your thoughts and then start asking why you're thinking this and then why I'm thinking that and why, you'll get to a root cause of your thinking pattern that needs to be submitted over to Jesus. And if we could submit over the roots, then the whole of the tree, the plant, that thing that's growing on the outside actually will prosper. So, when that happens, we get to trust the Father. We get to trust the Father to do the work that he said that he would do, that he's already finished, but we get to see manifested. Now, here's the last thing. Are we helping other people see the roots for themselves also? So, we like to tell people everything that we see in them, but there's kind of reality also. So what we see in people is what Jesus, this is the truth, is what Jesus is, all right? But there's a reality of where we're operating, and this gap needs to be moved, right? We need to move from here to there. And a lot of times, we need people in our life to show us roots that we're not ready to show ourselves. If you have somebody in your life that is brave enough to show you roots, you should go thank them tonight. And you should honor them for that. Okay? And in order for us to be an effective family, we need to have a lot more relationships that will show us roots in our own lives. It's not fun, but nobody said it was all going to be fun. Okay? But it's very good. So, think about the way that you think. Ask the question why. And when you are at the end of asking your question why and you can't figure it out, connect with someone who could show you roots that you can't see yourself. All right? Diane and Autumn.
I was just thinking with the get people in your life who can get to the root with you. The reason I think that is so important is because when you have mature voices in your life that are not attached to the sentiment, to the pain, to the thing the same way that you are, that objectivity frees you in a way that you can't do for yourself. We need each other for that reason specifically. And it can't just be, you can come up. It can't just be the ones that can identify with what we're going through because they're in it too, or they just come out of it. Those perspectives do have value, but the greater perspectives are the ones that, like Ben said, they love you enough to tell you the hard thing because it brings freedom. So make sure that you know those relationships, who they are, and if you don't have them, cultivate them immediately.
So
start identifying them.
I'm hearing, first of all, let's be open to one another, seeing ourselves sometimes better than we see ourselves. Can we all agree to that? That sometimes somebody else's perspective is actually better than our own, especially if we're blinded by our own vortex sentiment like we just talked about. Secondly, can we be lovingly brave enough to share that perspective with somebody else because we see better than they do? Someone in this room might be the answer to somebody else's really big situation. So please be brave enough, but also speak your truth in love, speak this truth in love, so that others can actually benefit from the sight you have.
Related to that, we have, I think Nick was the one that said this, but he said beyond your offense is your next breakthrough. And so many times when somebody who loves us that way comes and shares that thought with us, it will hit a fence in us, or it will challenge something in us, and the first thing that springs up is some sort of offense, or like, you don't understand, or you believe all your own excuses for it, and they don't, it's an incredible amount of love that comes to us that way. And when you love somebody that way, I mean, we all know when When you carry affection in your heart for someone, it is difficult to bring them pain. It's not fun. I think that's why Jesus said, go in love, speak the truth in love. It's difficult to go to somebody. So that love among us, you almost have to have so much compassion for the one who loves you enough to come say that to you. Whether or not you see their perspective, whether or not it's easily metabolized or it springs up some sort of offense that you have to, sort of take some time and work through, it's love that came. So we welcome them in that way.
If somebody is offended because you've spoken truth in love, don't be offended at their offense. Because when they take the time to work through it and they've begun processing and now they're ready to say you were right, what else do you see? They're going to need you to be ready to pick up from that place and continue forward with them.
Don't back off of what you've said. If you know you've spoken the truth by the Spirit in love and they basically tell you to get out of here, just say, I love you, but don't back off of what you said. Mm-hmm. It's really important.
I've had people that have spoken the truth in love, encountered my offense, and then when I needed them to keep going with me, they shut me down. And they held a vital piece for me that I could no longer access. Yeah. And then I was stuck, and there we both were. Alone, and I couldn't go any further. So if you are the one to speak truth in love, please be steadfast. It is hard. I think from a parenting perspective, it's as hard on you to discipline your children as it is for your children to be disciplined. It is hard both sides. But be diligent, whether you're the one receiving correction or you're the one offering the correction. It is so vital to be steadfast.
I think I just have one more thought I want to share. It's really, like with everything we've discussed tonight, and Mark even opened up this way when he said he was seeing this prevalence of this my truth or speak your truth. It's easy to just blur the line between telling the truth and being honest, but truth is the person of Jesus. He is truth. He divines all that is true. It's the blueprint that he laid down inside of us. Nothing short of that is life for us. So that truth is the thing that we need to continually excavate, to continually let him remind us what we were before life experience or childhood or any amount of encounters in our living changed our minds about things or taught us false wisdom. We were talking this week, and there's probably a lot we could all still unlearn. So there's such a need for us to rest back to completely reset into the person of Jesus, the blueprint of Jesus inside, and not let anything short of that. And it was interesting because I was just looking up. There's so many places where this shows up, how truth serves us. Like in Psalm, over and over it says, your loving kindness and your truth will continually preserve me. You desire truth in my innermost being. In the hidden part, you make me know wisdom. For loving kindness is great to the heavens and your truth to the clouds. God, in the greatness of your loving kindness, answer me with your saving truth. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. Loving kindness and truth go before you. They are the prerequisite to us truly knowing him. We have to let him hit reset on so many things inside. There was one more I felt like I really wanted to share. Oh, yeah, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth to truly know him, to truly reset into all of that. It's just so beautiful. So I think that's just my heart. What was he thinking about when he made us? What was he thinking about? Even thinking bigger, what was he thinking about when he put all of us in this room together? Like, what are the odds that we are all in this place at this time, loving each other the way we're learning to love each other? What is he imagining right now for us to share together, So I think there's a lot in that for us.
Yeah. One of the other things that we were talking about with guarding the way that you think and really considering the way you think is stop complaining. Does my complaining blind me to the beauty and opportunities available to me? But there's another piece to that. If you're complaining because you care. So there's a little bit of a differentiation between I'm complaining because I care, and complaining has become sort of the spirit of my life. I complain about everything. So you'll know when it's one or the other. But I think sometimes we'll complain about a thing because we just don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to influence the situation, and we're frustrated. So if you are experiencing complaining coming up and out of you, let it have your attention for a moment. That was a complaint. Why am I complaining? Where do I feel like my influence is limited or my understanding is limited? Who maybe has the understanding that I need? How can I partner with someone to not just be frustrated, but to actually influence the change that needs to take place? Am I willing to invest the time it's going to take to make that change? These are really great self-evaluating questions. So if you're experiencing complaint inside of yourself, take note, because it means you care about something. So let the care drive you to the solution. Don't let it drive you to like just frustration. There is something on the other side, but it requires connection with ideas and resource and those sorts of things. So go and get it. And then one of the things that we were talking about is knowing the things in our life that are not the Father will by default make him more known. And I think the idea with that is, yeah, I might need a little help with that thought. I did. Sometimes it's helpful to start cutting things out of your life, ways of thinking. Like if the complaining has sort of become the aroma of your life, it's time to stop complaining. It's time to know that that place is not the place for you to be stuck in any longer. Come out of that. Turn to gratitude. Start allowing a freshness to come in those places of your life.
Here's a good way to do this.
Yes.
I've always found like when I have like a complaining spirit going on, or even if I have a righteous complaint going on, I'll bring it to someone that I know will speak truth to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know who to complain to keep your complaint going.
That's good.
And you know who to complain to stop complaining. Hello? Yeah, we know that. So I've chosen that every time I want to complain, I'm taking it to someone that can actually find the true care inside of my complaint. Because every complaint actually has a root of care. Otherwise, I don't care. You're not going to complain about something you don't care about. So you're complaining because you care. Take it to someone that's willing to stop your complaining spirit and call forth the actual care you have inside of it. They're actually going to cause you to do something about it or to stop complaining, one or the other. That's going to end up taking place. Yeah, and then the thing about stripping off everything that's not me so that the Father's known, it's back to the whole idea of that picture back there on the wall. Who I am within is who the Father is who Jesus really is. So the more I take off of myself that I'm not, by default reveals him.
That's good.
Can't help it.
And the last thing, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening to the Father when he speaks? Or are you really quick to give your thought, your reply? Are you listening in conversations with people? Or before they're even really finished sharing their heart, you already have a reply ready to fire off? Are you listening? So slow down your response time. Give yourself a minute to absorb what you're hearing from the Father, from your brother, from your sister. Truly listen, and this will expand how you think. It's not so quick. Take a minute.
Yeah, I would
Listen.
really encourage us to be better listeners this year. Because as we're sitting with someone and we actually practice the art of listening, not practice the art of a comeback. Like one of my pet peeves, I'm just going to warn you now. I'm going to tell you out front. If I tell a story and you can't wait to tell a story that's better than my story, I struggle with that. Because I feel like you didn't really celebrate or feel the pain of my story. Anybody else? Anybody else have someone in their life that can't wait to tell a story just like yours, but it's way better?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right there! Instead of take a moment and feel why they told the story in the first place. Celebrate, feel the pain, understand, whatever it is. And then you'll have an audience the next time you have one. Be a better listener, because in the process of listening to someone else, you actually hear the Father and you see the Jesus in the other person. Things will change.
I have a story, and it's going to be a short story. I had this dream the other night,
saw this light, and it was in this dream, and it was, I looked up in the ceiling, and it was really, really, really bright. In my prayers at night, I asked God to show me visions at night, and He has, and I know it's Him. I know it was a bright light.
And you saw it?
And I saw it.
Wow.
And then I woke myself up snoring.
He woke himself up snoring. I love it. Okay, we're not done with what we have to do, but I do want to end. I want to respect our time as much as possible. Matt and Amber, I'm going to ask you guys to do something. What we tasked you with sharing, could you do a video for us on it? One of the things we talked about in our last leaders gathering was doing a better job and a more thorough job of eliciting testimony among us. Like what the Lord's actually doing among us, doing a better job of getting that out and declaring it among us. I think we have incredible things the Lord's doing in our lives, and we're just not good at remembering it when it's a really good time to share it. Don't forget, we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, the power of our testimony. We're not talking enough, not about our problems, not about what's going on that really needs fixed in our lives, but back to what Psalm 145 is. Go read one, please. Go home tonight and read Psalm 145, because what we are saying in Psalm 145 has nothing to do with our problems. The last time Ben actually asked for us to testify one to another, he said 3 people came up to him and shared what their problems are. Like, we're so good at talking to people about where we struggle and where our problems are, but sons declare the goodness of God. That's what's on our lips. So Matt and Amber are going to talk about some creative ways and even some cool things about testimony and how we as a family can get better at testimonies about the Lord. Amen? All right. Finally, Aaron was going to share. He says we don't need to share, but I just need you to know that the financial health of our family is improving. Yeah. Thanks in 2 parts. We're becoming even better stewards. I think we've been good stewards in the past, but we're even better stewards now. And I want to give a lot of credit to Aaron Road, who has been like lovingly strong. That's good. Good word. Lovingly strong about this is our budget. It's like he's Dave Ramsey with more hair. Yeah. Now, I really want to honor you, man. You've been really faithful to us in that. And you've also, giving has increased. So I don't know if you've been more intentional. I don't know if you've just decided to give more. I don't know what it is, but keep it up, because the things that we're going to be able to do this year and in the coming years is because of better stewardship and really becoming better in our generosity to the family. So thank you. I love you. I honor you. And I know it's late. Thank you for being with us. Oh, and if you have your boards, how many people brought your vision boards with you tonight? Would you just mind, you got 3 or 4 of you that shared them tonight. I don't know, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to put them up here and get a picture of them. So can we do that tonight before you go? Can you bring them up here tonight so we can take a picture of them? And if you can, share them with some other people before you go. I love you all. Thank you.